The sound of heavy boots crunching against the dry ground echoed across the desolate alien landscape. Captain Jacob Hunter, a seasoned human soldier, had fought countless battles across the galaxy, but nothing prepared him for this. Woo! The planet, known only as Zara 9, was a remote outpost deep in the heart of the Zorath Empire, a race of fierce and intelligent aliens. Jacob had been sent here with a small team of soldiers to investigate a distress signal that had gone silent for weeks. What he didn't expect was to find himself in the middle of a brutal battle with a species he had never encountered before. The Zorath, though technologically superior, were no match for Jacob's quick thinking and tactical mind. His team had fought fiercely against their attackers, but as the hours wore on, it became clear that the Zorath had a hidden strength, one that Jacob's team couldn't overcome. With most of his men either captured or dead, Jacob had no choice but to abandon the mission and run for his life. The distress signal had been a trap. Wounded and exhausted, Jacob found himself stumbling through the unforgiving terrain of the alien world. The sun, a massive orange ball in the sky, beat down mercilessly on his helmet, and his body ached with every step. His thoughts were heavy with guilt. His men were gone, and he had failed them. But there was no time to mourn. He had to keep moving. As he made his way through the rocky landscape, he noticed something unusual up ahead. There, lying unconscious in the middle of a wide-open plain, was a figure, a girl, about 16 or 17 years old, dressed in tattered clothing. Her long hair, once black, was now matted with dirt and dried blood. She appeared to be in a deep state of unconsciousness, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Jacob hesitated. He was a soldier, trained to fight, not to nurse the wounded. Yet something about the girl caught his attention. She wasn't an ordinary person. There was an energy about her, a strange aura that made Jacob feel uneasy. Ignoring the feeling in his gut, Jacob knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. Her pulse was weak but steady. His heart sank when he saw the deep gashes on her arms and legs. Whoever, or whatever, had done this to her had left her for dead.
With a grunt, Jacob lifted her gently into his arms. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't just leave her here.
He had to save her, just as he wished someone could have saved his men. His instincts told him that helping her might be the only thing that could give him some peace in this hellish nightmare. The sun was starting to dip behind the horizon as Jacob carried the girl through the wilderness. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath his boots became harder to navigate. Despite the difficulty, he never once thought of turning back. It was as though something inside him pushed him forward. The girl needed him. Hours passed as Jacob carefully moved through the rugged terrain. He had no destination in mind. He was only trying to find shelter before nightfall, but it seemed like the planet was mocking him as the landscape stretched endlessly in every direction. No trees, no buildings, just the barren wasteland. Eventually, he found a small cave nestled in the side of a rocky hill. It was just big enough for them both to fit inside. Jacob laid the girl down gently on the cold stone floor, his muscles aching from the long trek. He checked her again for any signs of infection or serious injury, but her wounds seemed to be healing on their own, though slowly. Jacob removed his helmet and wiped the sweat from his brow, letting out a deep breath. The night air was thin, and he felt it burn in his lungs. His mind raced, but there was no time to think. He needed to focus on her now. As he reached into his pack for a medkit, he couldn't help but wonder who she was. Where had she come from? What was she doing on this planet? And why had she been left to die? The medkit was basic, but it would have to do. Jacob worked quickly to clean and dress the girl's wounds, making sure to be as gentle as possible. As he worked, he noticed something odd. The deeper cuts on her arms and legs seemed to glow faintly, as though the very skin beneath her injuries was alive. It was a strange, almost supernatural phenomenon, one that Jacob had never seen before. After tending to her as best as he could, Jacob sat back against the cave wall, his mind swirling with questions. Hours passed, and the girl still hadn't stirred. Jacob couldn't rest. His soldiers were still lost, the mission still incomplete. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the thought of the girl. She seemed different from anyone he had ever met. He felt a connection to her, a bond he couldn't explain. It was as if saving her was more than just a random act of kindness. It felt like it was meant to be. Suddenly, the girl let out a soft groan, her eyes fluttering open. Jacob stood up quickly, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But the girl didn't move aggressively. Instead, she blinked several times, clearly disoriented. Her eyes, a striking shade of blue, locked onto Jacob's, and for a moment there was a strange understanding between them. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak. Jacob hesitated before answering.
He had no idea what to say.
"You're safe," he finally said, his voice softer than he intended.
"I found you out there. You were hurt." The girl tried to sit up but winced in pain. Jacob moved quickly to help her, supporting her gently. Her gaze never left his. Then Jacob felt an odd sense of calm wash over him. It was as though, despite the chaos of everything happening around them, she was the one person who could make sense of it all. Jacob, he said quietly. Jacob. Who are you? The girl's brow furrowed as she tried to recall her name, but it seemed like a struggle. She opened her mouth to speak, but then closed it again, as though the words were trapped in her throat. She shook her head, her voice trembling as she finally spoke. I don't remember. Jacob's heart clenched. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the injuries she had sustained. There was something deeper, something hidden within her. He could sense it. Before he could speak, the girl looked up at him with an intensity that made his blood run cold. "I'm not from here," she said, her voice suddenly steady. "And they'll come for me!" Jacob's mind raced. "Who will come for you?" The girl closed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Zorath." Jacob's eyes narrowed. The Zorath. The very aliens his team had been sent to investigate. The same species that had nearly wiped them out. If they were after this girl, it meant she was more than just an innocent bystander. As the girl closed her eyes and drifted back into unconsciousness, Jacob sat there, a knot tightening in his stomach. He didn't know who she was or why the Zorath were after her, but one thing was certain. He couldn't let her fall into their hands. The sound of the alarm echoed through the corridors of the ship. Jacob's heart raced as the flickering lights cast shadows on the walls. He had thought they had escaped, thought they had outrun the Zorath Empire, but it seemed the universe had other plans. The girl, Isla, was still unconscious in the small medical bay of the ship. Jacob had done everything he could to stabilize her. He had made sure she was safe as he could make her in a situation like this. The ship was small, isolated, and drifting through the dark void of space. The only thing keeping them alive was Jacob's skills as a soldier and the hope that he could find a way to get them both out of this nightmare. But now, as the alarm blared in the background, he knew their situation was far from over. The Zorath had found them. The Empress, the cruel and merciless leader of the Zorath Empire, had made it clear that she would stop at nothing to capture Ayla. Jacob stood at the controls, staring at the blinking lights on the dashboard. The ship was still moving, but the Zorath fleet had already arrived. They were closing in on them fast, and Jacob had no idea how long they could outrun them. He had never been good at running, especially not from something like this. His thoughts were interrupted by the sharp sound of the door behind him opening. He turned around quickly, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But it wasn't an enemy soldier standing in the doorway. It was Isla. She was standing there, her face pale, but her eyes wide open and alert. Jacob's hand dropped to his side in surprise. "Isla," he said, his voice low. "What are you doing up? You should be resting." But Ayla wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked onto the control panel, her gaze intense and focused. It was as if she could feel the Zorath approaching even before Jacob did. "I heard them," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're coming for me!" Jacob's throat tightened. He had hoped to keep her sheltered, to keep her safe from the madness that was sure to follow. But the reality of the situation hit him hard. There was no escaping this now. The Zorath were already on their tail, and there was nowhere to hide. "You need to stay here," Jacob said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'll handle this. I won't let them get you." But Isla's gaze remained steady. There was something in her eyes, something deeper, stronger, that made Jacob pause. It was as if she knew exactly what was at stake. "I'm not afraid of them," Isla said, her voice still calm, though there was a flicker of something dangerous in her tone. "You don't understand. They want me for more than just my powers. They want to control everything." Jacob stepped closer to her, his hand outstretched. "Isla, I don't know what's going on, but I promise you I'll protect you. We'll get out of this. Just stay here." But she shook her head, stepping back from him. "You don't get it, Jacob. I'm the key to their victory. And I'm not just going to let them use me for their own purposes." Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What do they want with you?" Isla's eyes softened for a moment, and she looked away. "They want to harness my powers, Jacob. They want to use me to create a weapon, one that could destroy entire planets. I can feel it." "The Empress is obsessed with me." Jacob stepped back, his mind reeling. He had known that Ayla was different, that there was something unique about her. But this was far beyond anything he could have imagined. Before Jacob could respond, a loud mechanical noise filled the room, followed by a voice that chilled him to his core. "This is your final warning, human. Surrender the girl or face the consequences." The voice was cold, commanding, and unmistakably alien. It was the voice of the Zorath Empress herself. Jacob's heart raced. The Empress was already on their ship, and they had no way to escape. The Zorath had superior technology, and no matter how fast Jacob tried to fly the ship, it was only a matter of time before they were caught. Ayla's expression hardened. "I won't let her have me," she said, her voice determined. "You need to get me to the outskirts of their territory. I'll destroy the ship if I have to." Jacob turned to her, his eyes wide with concern. "What are you saying?"
Isla's eyes met his, and for a moment it was like she was seeing him for the first time. "I'm not just some helpless girl. I can fight back."
"But I need your help. We need to get to the weapon." Jacob's mind raced as he tried to understand what she was saying. The weapon. What weapon? "I'll explain everything once we're safe," Isla added. "But right now you need to trust me." Jacob didn't have time to argue. The Zorath were closing in, and they had no other options. With a deep breath, he nodded. "All right, we'll do it your way." Isla moved to the control panel, her hands moving swiftly as she input commands. "Where are you?" Jacob stood by, watching her with a mixture of awe and fear. What was she doing? And what kind of weapon was she talking about? As Isla worked, the ship's engines roared to life, and the vessel began to pick up speed. Jacob's eyes darted between the controls and the monitors, seeing the Zorath fleet getting closer by the second. They were almost out of time. "Are you sure about this?" Jacob asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Isla nodded without hesitation. "I am sure. If I can get to the weapon, I can turn the tide. I just need you to trust me." Jacob took a deep breath, his hand gripping the edge of the console. The Zorath were almost here. They had no other choice now. He had to trust her. But as the ship veered toward the Zorath's outer defense perimeter, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap.